Picture this. You have trained your entire life for one moment. You are standing at the Olympics. You skate the best performance of your life. Your coaches are crying. The crowd is on their feet. 5 out of 9 judges score you ahead of your competitor. And then the scoreboard goes up and you have lost. Not because you skated worse. Not because the technical panel found errors in your program. But because one judge, from the same country as your competitor, scored them nearly 8 points higher than you. 8 points. In a sport where gold and silver are often separated by less than 2. That is not a hypothetical. That happened at the 2026 Winter Olympics in Milan. And when people started asking questions, the organization that runs figure skating looked directly into the camera and said, "We have full confidence in our judges." This is that story. And it goes way deeper than one scandal at one Olympics. To understand why figure skating judging is broken in 2026, you have to understand what it was before. Because the current system was literally created to fix a different scandal. And the fact that we are still here, still having this conversation, tells you everything about whether it worked. Go back to 2002. Salt Lake City Olympics. The pairs figure skating competition. A Canadian pair named Sale and Pelletier skated what almost everyone in the building agreed was the best performance of the night. Clean, beautiful, technically difficult. The crowd gave them a standing ovation. And then the scores came up. And they lost to a Russian pair. And the audience booed, loudly. And then it came out why. A French judge named Marie-Reine Lagoni had been pressured by her federation to give the Russians high scores in exchange for support in a different discipline. A vote swap. One federation scratches another federation's back. A couple of athletes get their careers defined by politics instead of skating. And everyone shakes hands and moves on. The outcry was enormous. The scandal was so big that the IOC stepped in and awarded a second set of gold medals to the Canadian pair. The French judge was suspended. And the International Skating Union, which governs the entire sport globally, announced it was going to completely overhaul the judging system to make sure nothing like this could ever happen again. 2 years later, in 2004, they rolled out what they called the International Judging System. The IJS. And they were very proud of it. Here is the pitch they gave the world. The old system, the 6.0 system that everyone grew up watching, was too subjective. Judges gave scores based on vibes and comparison and reputation. There was too much room for politics. So the new system would be mathematical. Every single element of a skater's performance would be broken down individually. Jumps, spins, step sequences. Each element has a base value based on difficulty. Then judges grade how well each element was executed on a scale from -5 to +5. You add everything up and the math gives you a winner. No more backroom deals. No more politics. Just numbers. It sounded good. It sounded airtight. And for a while, people believed it. The problem is that math still requires humans to input the numbers. And humans have biases. And those biases, it turns out, are remarkably consistent and remarkably hard to eliminate. Here is where Alysa Liu enters this story. Because her comeback is the perfect lens for what is happening in figure skating right now in 2026. Alysa Liu retired at 16, came back, and when she returned to the competitive scene she was doing things that almost no woman in skating history had ever done consistently. Multiple quad jumps. The kind of technical content that should, under a system based on mathematical difficulty, produce dominant scores almost automatically. Quads have a higher base value than triples. Land them cleanly, collect the math, win. That is the theory. But anyone who has watched elite skating closely knows that the program component scores, the artistic side of the judging, are where the subjectivity lives. And the program component scores are almost entirely disconnected from anything that can be objectively measured. They are judging your skating skills, your transitions, your performance, your composition. Things that mean something but that also have no fixed standard. And that is where reputation matters. That is where being embedded in the establishment matters. That is where judges who know you and have watched you for years give you numbers that reflect relationships as much as performances. Alysa built her technical foundation outside the federation system. Her father ran an unconventional program. And while nobody is claiming her scores were unfairly low in a provable way, The broader dynamic she navigated throughout her career is the same dynamic that makes the whole system vulnerable. When your program component scores depend on judges who know you, like you, and have watched you develop in their system, being an outsider costs you in ways the math cannot see. Now let us get to the 2026 Olympics in Milan. Because this is where the judging problem stopped being a historical debate and became a live, documented, undeniable scandal happening in real time. The ice dance competition. Madison Chock and Evan Bates, Americans, going for gold. They are not rookies. They are the three-time reigning world champions. They had dominated the discipline globally for 3 consecutive years. Going into the free dance at the Olympics, they were one of the most decorated ice dance teams in American history. They skated, by every account, including their own, it was the best performance of their lives. 8 of the 9 judges on the panel scored them above 130 points. 5 of the 9 judges scored them ahead of the French team they were competing against. And they lost, because of the one judge who did not score them above 130. The French judge, who scored the French team 137.45 points and Chock and Bates only 129.74. A gap of 7.71 points between her scores for the two teams. When the other 8 judges on the panel had the gap at essentially nothing. The margin of Chock and Bates losing gold was 1.43 points total. The French judges' spread was 7.71 points. The math writes itself. Chock and Bates were careful in what they said publicly. They talked about the sport being judged, about accepting outcomes, about knowing they delivered their best. But they also said something that cut right to the core of this. One of them told reporters, and this is worth paying attention to, that any time the public is confused by results, it does a disservice to the sport, and that it is hard to retain fans when it is difficult to understand what is happening on the ice. That is a very diplomatic way of saying, we know what happened, you know what happened, and we cannot say it out loud. The ISU's response to all of this was essentially to shrug. They put out a statement saying it is normal for there to be a range of scores from different judges and that they have full confidence in the scoring. U.S. Figure Skating announced they would be sending a letter to the ISU requesting a review of the judging system. Not an appeal. They were very clear they did not expect a reversal. Just a letter, asking for a review. The French judge has not been suspended. No investigation has been announced. And more than 14,000 people signed a petition asking the ISU and the International Olympic Committee to investigate. As of the time this script is being written, nothing has changed. But here is what makes this so much bigger than just one French judge at one Olympics. Because researchers have been studying this for years. And the data they have collected is genuinely alarming. A website called Skating Scores runs a bias metric on every judge at every major competition. The methodology is straightforward. They look at how a judge scores athletes from their own country versus how they score everyone else. Then they calculate the difference. A judge with 0 national bias scores everyone consistently regardless of nationality. A judge with significant national bias scores their countrymen noticeably higher. At the 2026 Milan Olympics, they ran this analysis across all the judging panels. The results were not subtle. Of the 36 judges for the short programs across all disciplines, 30 of them scored athletes from their own country more favorably than athletes from other countries. 30 out of 36. That is not a coincidence. That is a pattern. In the free skate programs, 25 out of 29 judges with a national competitor in the field scored that competitor higher than average. On average, across the entire competition, a skater could expect a judge from their own country to award them nearly 2 extra points in the short program compared to a judge from a different country. In the free skate, that number jumped to over 3 extra points. 3 points might not sound like much. Remember that Chock and Bates lost by 1.43. Now here is the defense the ISU always gives, and it is worth taking seriously because it is not completely wrong. The IJS system removes the highest and lowest scores for each element before calculating the average. So in theory, extreme outliers get filtered out. The most egregious scores should not affect the final result. But researchers have pointed out a problem with this logic that the ISU has never adequately addressed. When one judge submits a score that is extremely skewed, it does not just get removed cleanly. It affects which other scores count as the lowest, which shifts the range of what gets included in the average. The ripple effects of a single biased judge do not disappear just because that one score gets dropped. They contaminate the entire calculation in ways that are mathematically real, but nearly invisible to anyone watching from the outside. A 2020 research paper by two academics named Dumoulin and Mercier went even further. They looked at the ISU's judge monitoring system, the process by which the organization is supposed to catch and correct biased judges. And their conclusion was not diplomatic. They wrote that current ISU judge monitoring is utterly inadequate. That paper came out in 2020. It is now 2026. The same problems are documented at the same Olympics. The ISU released a statement saying they have full confidence in their judges. Here is the part that the ISU really does not want you to think about. The way judges are assigned to panels is not random. Judges are nominated by their national federations. The ISU then selects from that pool. This means the entire pipeline of who gets to judge is controlled by the same national bodies who have a direct interest in their own athletes winning. You're selecting judges from a list provided by the countries those judges might favor. And then you are surprised when the judges favor those countries. The structure of the problem is not an accident. It is baked into how the system was designed. The IJS replaced one form of corruption, the explicit vote swap, with a more diffuse and statistically provable form of quiet nationalism. It is harder to point at one specific judge and say you made a deal. But the aggregate data shows the same thing the 6.0 system produced. Home country advantage. In numbers too consistent to explain away. So where does this leave skating in 2026? And what does it mean for athletes like Alysa Liu, who spent her entire career navigating a system that was supposed to be objective and never quite was? Madison Chock and Evan Bates have their silver medals. The French team has gold. The ISU has its statement about full confidence. US figure skating has its letter that they know will change nothing. And the fans who watched the free dance and felt something was wrong are still watching the petition numbers climb and wondering when anyone with actual power is going to do something. Alysa Liu's comeback, which was supposed to be about her technical dominance finally getting its full moment on the Olympic stage, exists inside this same system. Every skater does. The ones who win and the ones who lose are all at the mercy of a judging structure that was reformed 20 years ago in response to one scandal and has quietly produced the same outcomes ever since, just with better math to hide behind. The question is not whether figure skating judging has a bias problem. The data says it does. The researchers say it does. The athletes, in their careful, diplomatic, career-protecting language, are now saying it too on camera at press conferences. The question is whether anyone with the power to fix it actually wants to. Because fixing it would mean reducing the control that national federations have over who judges. It would mean real accountability for judges who consistently favor their own countries. It would mean the ISU admitting that the system they built to replace corruption has been producing bias for over 2 decades. And based on every statement they have released, every investigation they have declined to open, every petition they have ignored, the answer seems to be no. They do not want to fix it. They want to keep telling you they have full confidence in their judges. And somewhere on the ice, an athlete who trained their entire life for this moment is standing in second place wondering what exactly the point of the math was.